Hi, you are a Linux administrator or a developer and you want to learn automation or want to become a Red Hat certified engineer so you can automate provisioning, configuration, application deployment, and orchestration. Well, Ansible is one of the most famous automation tools in IT industry, and you should have some experience or exposure to it, especially if you want to level up your career. That is why I bring you this course, which will help you learn how automation works and pass your RHCE exam. Hi, my name is Imran Afzal, and I've been in IT for over 20 years now. I have been teaching many IT-related courses for years. I have my bachelor's from Baruch College and my MBA from New York Institute of Technology. If you are ready to take your automation skills to the next level, then come join me in this course to become a Red Hat certified engineer.
Hey folks, let's go over our course content. What is included in this course? I have divided this entire course in 10 different sections. Section 1 is about the introduction, which will cover the course introduction, the overview, exam information, what you should know, the exam format, how the exam is going to look like, and there are going to be handouts that you should read. Then in section 2, we will introduce Ansible. We'll go over what is Ansible and its background, benefits, and key terms for Ansible, how Ansible automation works. The lab design will install Oracle VirtualBox and set up our Ansible node on Linux. Then we will create additional Ansible clients. Then at that time, we'll install Ansible software. Ansible configuration will be done. And then we'll go over the YAML file, syntax, and example. Now, every section will have handouts for you to read and quiz for you to test your knowledge of what you have done or what you have learned in each section. In section 3, it's about Ansible playbook implementation, writing the first playbook, output playbook, creating multiple tasks in a playbook, install and start a service, host file syntax, set up connection to remote client status connectivity, and of course, handouts and quizzes. Moving on to section 4, deploy files to manage hosts and clients. We'll cover copy files to remote clients, change permission, check file directory status, create file and remove files, create a file and add text to it. Moving on to section 5, manage complex plays and playbooks. Set up Apache, run shell scripts, schedule a cron job through your playbook, download a package, create and mount new storage. Then section 6, automate Linux administration task, which includes user account management, add or update user password, killing a process. Then coming down to section 7, implement task control, how you could control your task. Pick and choose steps. Ansible ad hoc commands. I am covering a lot of ad hoc commands, so I'm splitting them into three different parts, part 1, 2, and 3. Then moving on to handlers, conditions, loops. And then coming down to section 8, which is to simplify playbooks with roles. We'll cover Ansible roles, roles by applications, and role on Ansible Galaxy. Then section 9 covers variable facts and additional features such as tags, variables in inventory file, Ansible Vault, how you could secure your Ansible, encrypt strings within a playbook. Then moving down to section 10, which is about Ansible tools and resources like other automation tools, what are out there that's available. Free source of Ansible and Red Hat Ansible will cover Ansible AWX and Tower. Ansible additional commands that you should know. Documentation and community help in case you get stuck somewhere, how you could go about getting help from community and troubleshooting. And of course, we'll end that with handouts and quizzes. Now that completes the entire overview of my course. Now I'm sure at this time you know that this is the right course for you in order for you to pass the RH294. In this video, we will be covering some of the exam information that you should be aware of. First of all, exam name is a Red Hat Certified Engineer, RHCE. Of course, I'm sure you know by now. And the code for the exam is EX294. The prerequisite for the exam is that you should be Red Hat Certified System Administrator, in short RHCSA, and to become a certified, you have to take the EX200 exam. Then the exam price is 400 as of today, while I'm recording it, is 400 US dollars. The duration for the exam is going to be 240 minutes, which is equal to 4 hours. The number of questions that you will be given during the exam will be 20 questions. The passing scores that you need to pass the exam is 210 out of 300 total score. Now, preparation for the exam. You could take Red Hat Enterprise Linux Automation with Ansible, which is RH294 course that is listed or that is posted on Red Hat website. This course is a 5-day course and it will cost you about 3,800 US dollars. This course will prepare you to pass the EX294 exam. Or you can take this course, the one I am teaching, which will prepare you almost 90% for the exam. Yes, you are not required to take any Red Hat provided classes. You could prepare for the exam from any training platform of your choice. You could find a lot of information about the exam from this URL, or you could simply go to Google or any search engine and type EX294 or RHCE, and it will give you the links to Red Hat website where you could find a lot of information about the exam. Let's talk about the exam format, how the exam is going to look like and what you should expect. The exam will be all hands-on. And please note, there will be no multiple choice questions. Everything will be based on a real world examples. There will be no internet access provided during the exam. It is a practical exam which requires you to use a Red Hat Ansible software to perform real world tasks. You will have access to multiple systems and will be required to install and configure Ansible software. Then, all 20 questions will test your knowledge on performing standard system administration tasks like what you would do in real corporate world. You will be tasked to create Ansible playbooks and use those playbooks to configure systems for specific role and behavior. In this video, we will have a quick introduction of Ansible. We'll find out what Ansible is. Ansible is an open source software provisioning, configuration, management, and application deployment tool enabling infrastructure as code. It runs on many Unix-like systems and can configure both Unix-like systems as well as Microsoft Windows. And that's the exact definition that we have from Wikipedia. So, to put it in a simple words, or I would say my definition, Ansible is basically a free automation tool that can automate IT tasks on local machine where Ansible is running and on remote machine. So anything that you wanted to automate, like a regular daily tasks for your IT needs, you could use Ansible to automate that. All right, so let's visualize it and understand exactly the purpose or how Ansible works. So let's say if you have a Linux machine or a Windows machine and you want to configure Apache in it or NTP server or anything that you want to configure. So what do? You log into that machine, SSH into it and configure it. Beautiful. What if you have two machines? Well, you could do the same thing, log in and configure it. And if you have three machines, again, you could log into the third machine, SSH into it and configure it. All right, that works in a smaller environment. Now, what if you have 3, 6, 9, 12, thousands or thousands of machines, for example, in a larger environment? Are you going to log into every single machine if you have to change a configuration on or similar configuration on all of them? No, right? It would be very cumbersome and it will take you a lot of time to log into every single machine and make that change. That's where you create an Ansible server, or that's where the Ansible tool is born. So you set up an Ansible server, which is also known as a control node. You install the Ansible software onto that machine. Then you log into that machine using SSH, the same way you will log into any Linux machine. And then you make the change to a configuration file on that control node and then push that configuration to all the different nodes or make the change to all the configuration of all the machines. See how easy it becomes when you do that through one server? Please note, Ansible is written in Python language, but it does not mean you need Python knowledge to use Ansible because Ansible has provided a very easy language to use to automate your tasks, which we'll cover later on. All right, Ansible can be used to provision system, meaning you could actually build systems from scratch using Ansible. Ansible is also used to configure those systems. Now you have the operating system built, the system is ready. Now you have to configure the system, meaning services or which way or you want your system to work. Once that is done, then you could deploy applications as well. Let's say if you have to install Apache application or SAP application or database on your system, then you could deploy those applications using Ansible. Once those deployed, it doesn't end here. You could manage those systems and applications using Ansible. So if you have to upgrade your system, for example, 6 months from now or after the deployment, then you could use Ansible to do that. Now let's take a look at a few examples of the tasks that can be automated using Ansible. Provisioning, which we already have talked about. You could actually provision your bare metal server, virtualization systems, network devices, storage system, cloud platform. Also, you could do system configuration, as I mentioned. What are the examples of system configurations? Such as updates or upgrades, package installation, service configuration, stop, start, restart of any services that can be done using Ansible. Users and groups. You could create one user on one server, or you could create that same user to multiple servers at the same time. Assigning permissions to files and directories. Moving on, you could do application deployment, backups, weekly or monthly system reboots, orchestration. What is orchestration? Orchestration is a way of automating your system step by step in a specific order. So let's take an example of e-commerce. In e-commerce, you have to have application setup, database setup, and web services. So you could actually let the system know through orchestration, and that orchestration wraps around Ansible that it should reboot or restart application services, database services, and then it should start the web services. So everything happens in a certain order. That is an orchestration that you could actually have that within Ansible to handle it. So that's how Ansible works, or a quick overview of Ansible. In this video, we will cover a brief history of Ansible. The Ansible project was started in 2012 by Michael D. Hann. It is an open source and community driven, and I'm sure you know the open source and the community driven when people get together from different part of the world toward one goal to build a tool. And open source is you could build your own code and add that to that tool to enhance its features. Then Ansible Incorporation was purchased by Red Hat in 2015. When it's purchased, even today, it is still open source. But certain part or certain features, I would say, of Ansible can be purchased from Red Hat, such as Ansible Tower, or if you need a subscription for support or consulting, that you could buy from Red Hat. It is available for most of the Linux distributions, such as Red Hat, CentOS, Fedora, Ubuntu, Debian, and SUSE. Now, Ansible can only be installed, the engine itself can only be installed on Linux systems. You cannot install on Windows servers. However, you could manage and automate Windows systems tasks using Ansible. All right, let's take a quick look at the need of Ansible. Once again, very fast infrastructure management, especially the virtualization. When we have thousands of virtual machines and we build virtual machines in a very fast way, you don't want to build them manually. It becomes cumbersome and tedious. That's when you use Ansible. Configuration management for system and application, multi-tier application automation like orchestration. Single point of automation, meaning if you have a one server like Ansible, you could change everything on that server and then push it out to all the rest of the world, meaning the rest of the virtual machines. When you are learning certain tool, it is important that you should know why you are learning or what's the benefit of learning that tool. So I have compiled a list of all the benefits that Ansible has to offer. And the very first one is it is agentless. What it means that Ansible can be installed on one server, and let's say if you have to manage 100 other servers, you don't need to install the Ansible or its agent to those other 100 servers. All you need is an SSH access to that server and then let Ansible do the rest. Then Ansible is open source. It has its features that can be changed or added as you move on, or you could also not only rely on the company to add its feature, you could request a feature and have them updated by the community. Then avoid human errors. If you have to make changes to one, two, or three servers, most likely you're not going to make a mistake. But if you're repeating the same procedure on 10 or 15 or 20 different servers, then most likely you will make a mistakes. And especially when we are talking about the larger environment where you have to manage or log into thousands of different servers and do the same configuration change, then I'm very sure that you will make a mistake because I know I have made mistakes in the past. So when you are making a change on only on one place and on Ansible server and you're double checking it and you're pushing it out to other servers, beautiful. You don't have to make a mistake. There won't be a chance of human errors. So, of course, when you are automating tasks, what is it doing for you? It is saving you time. And once your time is saved, what happens? It increases your productivity. You could focus on other projects in your organization and let Ansible do these repetitive, boring, tedious tasks for you. Easy to use? Yes, it's a lot easier. When I learned Ansible, I had to learn from scratch, I tell you that. But it's so easy to learn, especially for those who know Linux. You don't have to be really good in Linux, but if you have a basic understanding of Linux, it's a lot easier to use. It's simple, human readable text file. What it means is the playbooks that we're gonna write to automate tasks, those playbooks are so simple, human readable text file. You would know by looking at it. That's a lot easier. It's not really like a code or C++ code where you look at it and you're like, oops, what is that? No, it's very easy to read and understand. It's flexible. Moving on, it's secure. Yes, if it's agentless and you are doing everything over SSH, as you know, SSH stands for Secure Shell. So if you are connecting to all your remote hosts over SSH, it's automatically secure. All right, moving down the line or moving down the list, it provides pre-written modules. So you don't have to have your own or create your own module to do certain tasks. Let's say if you have to do a yum install, you have a module for it. Let's say if you wanted to start a service, you have a module for it. Most of the tasks that we do in a Linux environment or even Windows environment, we have a pre-written modules for them. It's very easy to learn, of course. Now, remember, as long as you have a good instructor, I will make sure that you learn everything about Ansible in this entire course. All right, great product for orchestration. Yes, if you have an environment where you have to schedule tasks or put them in order, it's a great product for that. Ansible can be used not only for systems but also for network storage and cloud. All those gears that you have that you if you want to configure them, you could use Ansible for it. It provides approximately 1300 module out of the box and about 4000 module on Galaxy. As we're going to go through the modules, right now you probably don't know what module is, but module, just to give you a quick update, module is something that provides you to automate a certain task. We'll cover that later. Right out of the box, it had 13 of those. Sorry, 1300 of those. All right, huge online Ansible resources. That's for documentation, that's for module, that's for systems information. You could go to Ansible, docs.ansible, galaxy.ansible, GitHub, and many, many other online resources where you'll find great, great documentations and resources on Ansible. And the last but not the least, it's a big plus for job seekers who are looking for a job and for those who are already in IT and they want to level up their career. If you want to be in DevOps, which is the development operations, and if you want to enhance your skills, Ansible is the tool for you. If you know Linux, if you are in the system administration, Ansible is the answer for you because I know the system administrator does a lot of automations. You probably write shell scripts to automate your things, or you write um, shell scripting, PowerShells in Windows. With Ansible, you don't have to do that in every server. Here is the answer to your prayers where you do or manage or automate all your IT tasks. In this video, we will cover the terminologies used in Ansible. The very first one is the control node or Ansible server. The server which runs Ansible application. This is the main Linux server where Ansible engine or Ansible application or tool is installed, and that's where you could create or manage all your playbooks, and you could send or communicate from this server to all the remaining or remote clients. This server is called control node. Then modules. Module is a command meant to be executed on the client side. Most of the IT task modules are already created and can be found on Ansible website. There are almost 1300 modules out of the box that are available and about 4000 plus modules on Ansible Galaxy websites. You could go to docs.ansible.com and search for modules of your choice if you want to automate a certain task. You could also go to galaxy.ansible.com. Now let's look at the example of modules. Of course, we will cover modules in great detail later on. Install HTTP. For example, if that's something you want to do, when you want to install HTTP, what command you do? You use either yum or in newer versions of Linux, you could use DNF. So you do have a module for that. You don't have to actually use the yum command or DNF command itself. You rely on the module. Same way you enable the service, there's a service module for it. And you could start that service. There's a service module for that as well. These are pretty much two modules that you see. One is to install HTTP, and second module that is used is to enable and start the service. When we combine all of these three, they become a task. That task is within a YAML file. Now let's talk about a task. A task is a section that consists of single procedure to be completed. A task can have multiple modules. As we have seen in the above example, there are installing HTTP package. Once it's installed, we enable it so it could start at boot time. And then we wanted to start that service. All of that together is comprised of a task. Then you could have more or additional tasks doing different modules. All right, moving on. Then we have a playbook, automation file with step-by-step execution of multiple tasks. So when you combine all those tasks, and each task would have multiple modules, that is written in a certain file. That certain file is called a playbook. YAML. YAML stands for a playbook written in YAML language, and YAML itself stands for yet another markup language. So the format that is written within playbook, that format is called YAML. And once that format has all the module and task, it is the final item or the final product is called playbook. Inventory. Now you have a node, a control node, or an Ansible server. You have to go and reach out to the remote servers, right? So those remote servers has to be listed somewhere. That is listed in a file called hosts, and that host file is our inventory file that has information about remote clients where tasks are executed. Moving on to tag, there is another terms that used called tag, a reference or alias to a specific task. So this way, you don't have to repeat that module or that task again and again. You could reference it to a tag. Of course, we'll cover that later on. Variable. Variable are like containers that holds or defined value which can be used repetitively. Then role. Splitting of playbooks into smaller groups. Roles let you automatically load related vars, files, task handlers, and other Ansible artifacts based on a known file structure. After you group your content in roles, you can easily reuse them and share them with other users. So if you have, for example, you wanted to install the Apache server, you wanted to start the service, you could put them into a smaller playbook, and then you could put that playbook into a role. So the main playbook doesn't have to be so cluttered, I would say, with all those long list of modules. You could call upon those smaller playbooks, and that's what these roles are for. Anyway, that's the list of terminologies that I wanted to cover. There are a few that I probably not have covered, but anyway, these are the most important ones that you should know as you're gonna learn Ansible. In this video, we will learn how Ansible works. So we know until now that Ansible is used to automate our IT tasks. All right. So very first thing is each of those specific tasks in Ansible is written through module or a group of modules. Multiple modules are written in sequential order as how you want them to be executed. Then multiple modules for related tasks is called a play. If you have one, two, or three modules to perform certain tasks or they are related to each other, then together that's a task and that become a play. Then all of those little plays together makes a playbook. Playbook is written as a file format called YAML. All right. So through these statements, if you still have a confusion or still don't understand how Ansible works, that's perfectly fine. Let's visualize it. You start writing your YAML file through Vim or VI, whichever your preferred editor is, and you want to execute tasks to all the remote servers. Those remote servers or your hosts are the web servers. All right. On those web servers, you have installed the operating system. Everything's done. It's time to install HTTPD. And if you need to install HTTP, you have to use a module to install a package. Then you have to enable HTTP. That enabling is the service of HTTP. And then you have to use a module. That module will be a service module. Same thing, then you have to start that HTTP service and you will use a service module. All right, that all of them, all three of them together makes a play because they are all related tasks. When I say related, it all has to do with HTTP, HTTP, HTTP. All right, next one is enable HTTP port on firewall. Now, that is another module. That module is to enable or go to firewall and enable port 80 for HTTP. That's a play itself because it's not part of the play right above where we are starting or and installing HTTP because in this one we are going to firewall. However, all of these together, because all these tasks or all these modules are combined together, makes a task because they are going to the web servers. All right, so now if you wanted to do certain task or run certain task on database servers and you wanted to use the same YAML file, then you will most likely will log into database server, create a table, restart the database. All three of them would require a module to do that. And that three modules makes a play. And then, of course, that's another task because it's going to another set of servers. All right, all of these three plays together, if you are done with that file, makes the playbook. And that playbook is written in what language? It's written in YAML format. All right, moving on, commands example that are used to run Ansible. To run modules through a YAML file, you would have to run the command ansible-playbook. That's all one command, space, followed by the name of the YAML file. Then it will simply go through all the modules you have written inside of the YAML file and execute them sequentially. To run module independently, meaning if you wanted to run a specific module without running it through a YAML file as an ad hoc, you could do just Ansible. My servers, for example, my server are the list of your hosts. And let's say if you want to run the module ping to ping them, you could do that. For this, you don't need a YAML file. However, we will cover that later on, so not to worry about it right now. Ansible configuration files are etc Ansible, ansible.cfg, Ansible, etc Ansible host. That's where all of your hosts or remote hosts where you want to execute your task on. All of them reside in this file. And then etc Ansible roles. Roles is where if you want to separate each of the plays on a separate files, that becomes a lot easier so there your YAML file doesn't look cluttered. Anyway, once again, we'll cover roles later on. So that's how Ansible works. Maybe if you are still a little confused, trust me on this. Don't worry about it. I'll take it. I'll make it so easy for you that you will understand everything one by one in the later lectures. In this video, we are going to talk about how we are going to design and set up our lab. So let's talk about designing our lab first. So if you are in corporate world, you're working for any company, for example, ABC or XYZ company, and you wanted to go through the automation through Ansible, then most likely you do have access to a server or a computer and it has Linux operating system running on it. All you have to do is install Ansible, and then you also have other Linux servers or Windows server for that matter that you want to control and automate tasks onto those servers. So you basically send the commands, the automation commands from Ansible to those clients, and that's how it will work in a corporate world. Now, what if you have a home environment? In home environment or in your lab environment, I would say you would have to find a computer. A computer could be either desktop or laptop. It has to have a Linux operating system running on it, and we will install Ansible on top of the Linux operating system. By the way, if you do not have a Linux operating system directly running on that computer, it's fine. I will show you in the next slide how we're going to go about installing Linux. Then we have to make sure that computer or that Linux machine has a required package, which is Python 3. Again, we'll talk about that later. If that computer is running Windows or the virtual machine that we will be setting up on top of this computer, if it has a Windows running, then please note that Ansible node or Ansible engine cannot be installed on Windows Server. All right, so once we have that Linux machine, then we install the Ansible and then we could execute all the commands to our remote clients. Moving on to the detailed design of our lab. So we have two options here. Option number one, we have to find a computer, a desktop or a laptop. And let's say if your laptop is running Mac OS or if it's running Windows. That's perfectly fine. All you have to make sure that it has Intel VTX or AMD 64-bit CPU. The operating system which is running on your computer has to be a 64-bit operating system. The computer has to have a 8 gig minimum 8 gig of RAM, which is the memory. It has to have 40 to 60 gig free disk space. All right, so once you have that, that's the minimum requirement. Then what we will do, we will install an virtualization software on top of that, on that operating system. That virtualization software could either be Oracle VirtualBox or it could be VMware Workstation Player. Then we will create a virtual machine, a very first virtual machine on that virtualization software, and then we will install Linux operating system. That Linux operating system could either be CentOS, or Red Hat, or Ubuntu. Ansible can be installed and can be run on any of these operating systems. We will install Ansible engine or Ansible software on these operating system, and that virtual machine or that virtual computer will become our control node. Any Ansible engine which controls the remote clients or other clients is known as control node. Then we will create another virtual machine that would have either Linux or Windows, whichever computer that you want to control. So in our lab design or in this course, we will create one extra virtual machine which we will control through a control node. If you have enough resources, then I would say aside from client 1, we'll create another client, a VM3 running Linux as well, and we will call it client 2. Now this is our option 1. What's the second option? The second option is if you do not have the required resources or a computer or a desktop in your home, then you could actually utilize one of those cloud services such as AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure. Create an account, and most of these cloud services gives you free account and free access to create virtual machines. In this example or in this option, you will create a VM1 and then you will install Linux operating system on it. Again, it could be either CentOS, Red Hat, or Ubuntu. Then we will install Ansible on it, and that becomes our control node. Then we'll create VM2 as our remote client, which we will be running or executing our commands through control node. In that VM2, of course, we will install a Linux. Same thing, this is going to be client 1. Same thing with VM3, Linux, and that becomes client 2. So that's our option 2. But in this entire course, we will go through option 1. And by the way, the VM1, that's where we will install the Linux operating system. In this entire course, we will go through the CentOS or CentOS operating system installation, and we will set our control node on that operating system and install the Ansible on it. In this video, we are going through the installation of virtualization software. So the very first thing we have to do is to identify whether we are using a laptop or a desktop. That's going to be your home lab. It could either run a Mac operating system or Windows operating system. Then the next thing we'll have to do is install a virtualization software on it. The virtualization software for this course, we will be using Oracle VirtualBox. If you're using Apple Mac OS with M1 chip, then you would have to go with UTM virtualization software. All right, so first thing is, what is a virtualization software? Virtualization software is a software that runs on top of your existing operating system, and it allows you to create virtual machines on top of your existing operating system, so you do not have to remove the existing operating system. What is Oracle VirtualBox? So Oracle VirtualBox is a free software. It's a virtualization software by Oracle that we will be using in this course. You could go with a VMware Workstation Player as well if that is something that you are familiar with and that's something you prefer. Then we will go ahead and download the Oracle VirtualBox. And then once it's downloaded, we'll go ahead and install Oracle VirtualBox on our computer. My computer is using a Windows 64-bit operating system. If you are using Windows computer, then you could go to your search menu and type my computer or this PC, right click and go to properties. Here you will find out the processor information, the memory that you have installed, the type of computer. As I said previously, it has to be a 64-bit operating system. All right, once you have confirmed, now it's time to go ahead and download the Oracle VirtualBox. By the way, if you already are familiar with Oracle VirtualBox or you already have a virtual machine running Linux operating system to install Ansible, then you could simply skip this entire video. All right, if you're doing this for the first time, then let's go ahead and start up your browser. Any browser of your choice, I'll go ahead with Firefox. And here I'll type it in download Oracle VirtualBox. Go to the one that says virtualbox.org, click on it, and pick your operating system. Since our operating system is Windows, so we'll pick Windows host. Now, please note, if you see a higher version of Oracle VirtualBox, then go with the most recent version download. Once it's downloaded, perfect, go ahead and click Open File. Now this is the time to do the installation. All right, you might get a message say, do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? Click yes. All right, welcome to Oracle VM VirtualBox. The version setup wizard, just simply follow the wizard. Leave everything default, click next. Choose from the following options: create a start menu, create a shortcut on desktop, create a shortcut quick launch bar. I'll leave that out. And register file association, leave everything as default, click next. Proceed with installation. Warning, network interface. Installing Oracle VM VirtualBox networking feature will reset your network connection and temporarily disconnect you from the network. So if you are running any other important or production critical application on your machine, this machine where we're installing, then I would say stop them first, because the network adapter will reset and it will give you a brief interruption on the network. So if not, if it's just a lab or home computer, then simply click yes and install. All right, Oracle VM VirtualBox version installation is complete. Click Finish button to exit the setup, and also a check mark is already there by default if you wanted to start it when you click Finish. All right, so as soon as the application or the software starts up, this is the window box that you will see. Let me minimize the Firefox in the background. And right here you will see this is the Oracle VM VirtualBox Manager. This is where you will go in and create virtual machines. And once we create the virtual machine, we'll install the Linux operating system, install Ansible, and we'll go it from there. Previously, we have downloaded and installed Oracle VirtualBox. Now it's time to go in and create a virtual machine and install Linux operating system. So step by step, the very first thing we did, we identified our computer where we will be installing the virtualization layer. So second thing we did, downloaded and installed the virtualization, which we picked the Oracle VirtualBox. Now the third thing is we'll go and open up our VirtualBox and create a virtual machine. Then the last step is to install Linux operating system. Now in this course, I'm going to install Linux CentOS version 8 operating system. Of course, you could go with any version of your choice. You could either go with Red Hat 6, 7, 8, or you could go with CentOS, you could go with Ubuntu. All the instructions have been provided. But for this course, we will go with CentOS version 8. All right, so first thing is to create a virtual machine. All right, so you could start your Oracle VirtualBox by typing right here, or simply double click the icon on your desktop. Let's start it from the desktop. Click New to create a new virtual machine. Let's pick the name Ansible Control Node. This is the name of the virtual machine, not the name of your operating system. All right, so pick the type Linux and the version. Let's pick Linux 2.6, 64-bit, and click Next. This is the size of your memory, which is 1 gig by default. Let's change it to 2 gig, 2048. Next. This is going to ask you about your disk. Create a virtual disk now. The file type, leave it default, and change the disk size to 20 gig. If you are planning on adding a lot of scripts or a lot of huge files onto your Ansible control node, then change the size according to your requirement. Click Create. Now your virtual machine has been created. I want you to go to Setting, and you will see in general it has the name and the type of operating system that will be hosting on this computer. Go to System. If you want to change the memory, you could change it now. If you want to change the processor, which is given as one CPU by default, if you want to change it now. Go to Storage and click on Ansible Control Node.vdi, and you will see this is the 20 gig that we have picked for our disk space. I want you to go to Network and change the attach to from NAT to bridge adapter. This will allow you to connect to the internet once you have the operating system installed. That's perfect. Click OK. Now, before you power it on, it is going to ask you where the operating system ISO image. So we have to download the CentOS ISO image. For that, we'll go to our Firefox. That's a browser that I'm using. Go to Google and type it in download CentOS. Go to the CentOS.org. Click on CentOS Stream because CentOS Linux will give you 7. If you wanted to go with 7, that's still fine. Click on this one on 7 and pick the first one, the first mirror that will allow you to download the ISO image. Now we are going with 8, so CentOS Stream version 8 and x86 underscore 64-bit. Click on it and pick the first one, and then pick the one that says x86-64, the version dvd1.iso, and you will notice it has the high size. Pick this one and it will start downloading. I have already downloaded this ISO image to save some time, so I'm going to cancel it. If you have not downloaded, so please wait until the download completes. All right, so download is completed. I have it downloaded on my desktop. Right here is the downloaded of ISO image. Now go ahead and click on Start. We'll start the virtual machine. Once it starts, it's going to ask you where is the ISO image of the operating system that you want to install. So we'll pick this folder, add, where is our ISO image. It is on our desktop, and right here is the ISO image. Click open and click choose and then start. This page is by default selected test this media and install CentOS Stream. Move your arrow on the keyboard and select the first one, which is install CentOS Stream 8 and hit enter. All right, you're gonna get the welcome to CentOS installation. Pick your language, the region. For me, it's United States, and then click continue. All right, please complete items marked with this icon before continuing to the next step. Keyboard English, leave it default. Installation source local media, which we have picked from our desktop. Installation destination. So this is the 20 gig. It's already checked. Click done. It's checking storage, automatic partitions. We are now going to do the custom partition. We're just picking the automatic partition. Language support, leave it default. Software selection. Server with GUI. You can leave that default unless you want to add more packages. Simply click done. KDump is enabled by default. Leave as is, time and date. For me, it's America's New York. You could change it according to your time and region. Network and host name. Right here, our network is turned on. We'll move this here and change the host name to Ansible control node. Or we could make it shorter by just saying control node. This is going to be the host name of this operating system. Once you click on apply, it will say current host name is controlled node. The network is connected on already. Beautiful. Click done. Now that one is done. Security policy, you don't have to make any changes. Root password, pick a password. Okay, it's saying the password fails the dictionary check. It is based on a dictionary word which you will have to press done twice to confirm. So if you're picking a weak password, that is fine, but you have to press done twice. But of course, I would recommend that you pick a stronger password. All right, since this is, again, it's lab, that is fine. The next one right here says user creation. If you want to create a user, you can. I'm going to create a user for myself. Requires a password. Pick a password for that user. Again, it's a weak password. That is fine. So I'm going to click done twice. All right, all the information that is needed has been provided. Perfect. Now click on begin installation. Now this is going to take anywhere from 5 minutes to 20 or 25 minutes, depending on the speed of your computer where you are running this virtual software. All right, I'm going to fast forward from this point. All right, so installation has been completed. Go ahead and click on reboot system. License information, click I accept the license agreement. Done. Finish configuration. All right, so now you got the login screen. Go ahead and click on your name, or you could click on not listed and type it in root if you wanted to log in as root. Hit enter. Okay, so now we have a desktop. Click on activities. and click on the terminal. This is the terminal that we will be using to execute Ansible scripts or Ansible commands. But for that, first we have to install Ansible. So anyway, for this video, we have created a virtual machine and installed a Linux operating system on our virtual machine. And of course, the next step would be to install Ansible software. I'll see you in the next lecture. Hey folks, so this is the last step of our lab setup. We have downloaded and installed Oracle VirtualBox, then we have downloaded and installed Linux operating system. Now it's time to install Ansible software or Ansible engine on our Linux operating system. All right, so one important thing before you go ahead and install Ansible is that I want you to take a VM snapshot. This will allow you to come back or revert back to the VM original state when you took the snapshot in case you do make a mistake or do some kind of misconfiguration on your Linux operating system. All right, so go to our Oracle VirtualBox. Right here, your Ansible control node is powered off. You have this menu. If you don't have this menu, simply click on these three dots, click on snapshot, and then click take. Give it a name. I'm going to give Linux install point, which will remind me this is the time when I've completed the Linux installation. Click OK. All right, it's done, and I'll go ahead and click Start. All right, while this virtual machine or this Linux operating system is starting it up, let's go to the next step, which is Ansible installation guide can be found on this link. So I want you to write down this link because this will give you a lot of good information of step-by-step instruction on installing Ansible. If you are installing on a different version than CentOS 8, which I am going to be installing it on. So if I go to my Firefox, which I have already opened and I am already on that page, on this page you will notice here's a list of all the instructions of installing Ansible on different operating systems. Right here is RHEL, CentOS, or Fedora. These are the instructions which we will follow to install it on CentOS. If you are doing it on Ubuntu, follow this instruction. For Debian, follow this instruction. And there are other Unix or Linux type operating system which you could follow the instruction and install Ansible. All right, going back to our slide and going back to our virtual machine. Our virtual machine is up and let's log in as ourself. Okay, so if you notice, this is a smaller windows of VirtualBox. If you wanted to make this window bigger, you could right click on your desktop, go to display setting, and right here where you see resolution, click on it, change the resolution to whichever resolution according to your requirement. I'm going to leave it as is for now. Okay, this is a welcome message that you're gonna get. Every time you start it up, you could actually quit out of it by clicking here and quit. All right, so going back to display, we'll change whatever you have, apply the setting, and it will make it bigger. All right, click on activities, go to the terminal. So we have the terminal open. The next step is for CentOS Red Hat Fedora version 7, you will have to run the command yum dnf. DNF is going to be replacing yum eventually. So for now, you could use either or. So install epel-release and then install Ansible. Now for CentOS 8 or any of the version 8, these are the instructions that we will follow. Go back to our Linux machine. To follow these instructions and install any package, we have to run the command as root. So become root. All right. Now go ahead and run the command yum install epel release. All right. It's asking you to confirm, type Y and confirm again, and the package has been installed. All right, the next thing is yum install Python. Now, with CentOS 8 or newer version of Red Hat or Linux, the Python package should already be installed or installed out of the box. To confirm that, you could run the command rpm-qa and grep for Python. And you'll notice these are all the list of Python packages that's already been installed. Great. Now the next step is to install Ansible. So let's clear the screen and type it in yum or DNF. So in this time we'll run DNF. Install Ansible. This is the Ansible engine or software itself. And then next package that we will install in addition to Ansible is the Ansible documentation. And enter. All right, Ansible and Ansible doc package is completed. To verify it, you can run the command rpm qa and grep for Ansible. All right, it's there, Ansible core and Ansible doc. The next thing is if you are using CentOS 8 and the above steps don't work, then follow these steps. So usually version 8 will come with Python 3. If it's not, then you follow these steps. Yum install Python 3 and then use Python package installer to install Ansible, which is pip3 install Ansible dash doc. All right, moving on. If you're using Red Hat 8 and the above steps that we followed did not work, then you have to enable the Ansible engine repository to install Ansible. And for that, you will run the command subscription dash manager repos enable the Ansible repositories and then install Ansible. All right, so now after Ansible has been successfully installed on your Linux machine, let's confirm. So here is our Linux machine. Let's clear the screen and you will run the command Ansible dash dash version. And it will give you the version of the Ansible engine or Ansible software that has been installed. All right, it is there. We confirmed that. Now run Ansible command module using ping. So it will be Ansible localhost -m ping. This command is going to run Ansible module called ping against the localhost. So simply as if we are doing ping localhost and it is pinging and confirming it could ping the localhost just like that, we have a ping module within Ansible. By the way, there are many more modules that we will cover later on, but for now this is what I wanted to confirm to see if Ansible has been installed. All right, let's check the Ansible config files. So let's clear the screen again. The Ansible files, all of them are located in etc Ansible, and you do listing of the files and directories. You'll see there are roles directory, which we will cover later on. Then there's a hosts file. That's where all the remote clients inventory resides. So we every time we run an Ansible command, it comes to this file to see where are the list of all the hosts or remote clients that it has to execute the commands on. And the last one is ansible.cfg. If you need to make any configuration change on Ansible, you could do it on this configuration files. All right, the last thing, please note, if you have SC Linux enabled on remote nodes, you will also want to install libsclinux-python on them before using any copy file template related function in Ansible. Now, you do not have to go log into each and every one of them. What you could do is you can use the yum module or DNF module in Ansible to install this package on remote hosts that do not have it. All right, so we will disable the SC Linux on our remote client because we are using all that setup in our lab environment. But if you're doing in production, then please make sure you install this libsclinux-python package. All right, so now this completes our entire lab setup and configuration. Now it's time to really get our hands dirty and run our Ansible automation scripts against our local hosts and remote clients. In this video, we will learn how to install Linux operating system on a cloud platform. This is the option 2 of our lab design. Now, please note, if you are going with option 1, in which you have installed the virtualization software on your own computer and creating a virtual machine, then simply skip this entire video. This video is for those who want to create a Linux virtual machine on a cloud platform. All right, so let's see how it's going to work. So here we have our computer running Windows or Mac. Now on that computer, we will go to our web browser and we will access one of the cloud platforms. And those cloud services, for example, AWS, Google Cloud, or many other clouds that are available to you. And of course, you need to make sure those are free. And if you're using for corporate world, then you can pay for it and get a Google Cloud account. All right. Once we have the account, then we'll create a virtual machine and install Linux operating system. With the cloud, more specifically with AWS, the creating a virtual machine and installing a Linux, this is all bundled up as one step because you could pick a virtual machine with the Linux operating system and it will create it for you. All right, I could give you a quick demo of how you create or how you could install the Linux on AWS. And then I'm sure you'll have a good idea and then you could take it from there. So go to your web browser of your choice. I'm going to use Firefox and simply go with AWS free account. That's what you have to type, AWS free account. All right, when you come here, you could go to the one that says free cloud computing services right here. And it says AWS free tier. Okay, click on that. All right, so right here it says AWS free tier, gain free hands-on experience with AWS platform products and services. All right, it tells you the information about the type of offers, free trial, what it includes. It has 750 hours that you could use. So now remember, you could keep your machine running for 750 hours in a month. If you're running two virtual machines, combining that should not exceed to 750. If it is going to exceed, then Amazon is going to charge you. So just be very careful. And one more thing I gotta tell you. When you are creating this free account, you will need a credit card to create a free account and use their virtual computer. So if you do not have a credit card, then you could stop right there and go with option 1 that we discussed earlier. All right, for create account right here before we creating account, this is the compute that tells you the number of hours. This is the storage, how much storage we have. We are only given 30 gig of storage, nothing more. If you go with even 1 gig more than that, you will be charged. So just be very careful. All right, so when you need to create an account, you will just have to go through, create a root user email, that your main user email that you could use. This is the AWS account name, any account name that you could pick that is not taken, of course. I have already created my AWS account to save some time. So I'm going to go in and click here. And here is my email. And here is the password that I have saved earlier. Okay, so once you create your AWS account, you will be get into the EC2, which stands for Elastic Cloud Compute. So in short, EC2. So you have to go to EC2, and here is what the EC2 dashboard looks like. All right, so your region, pick a region where is closest to you, depending on your region. I am closest to the east side. I'm in New York, so it's US East Ohio side. I could pick this one or that one. It doesn't really matter. All right, so let's go back. So this is the username that we created earlier. All right, so once you come to this dashboard, then you come here and says right here, launch instance. Click on launch instance. Okay, this is the name of your instance. So you could put in my Linux. Sorry, you could pick, I think, the lowercase in this case. Let's try the uppercase, lowercase. Let's see what happens. I don't think there should be a problem. My Linux VM. Okay. So once you come down, it says search or browse more AMIs. AMIs are like a combined virtual machine container with the operating system pre-built for you. So if you go through the list, you're not gonna find CentOS. So CentOS and Red Hat is the same, so you could go with Red Hat. So you pick the Red Hat. Description 64-bit AMID, leave that default. You're going to be picking T2.micro, which is free tier eligible, leave that default. It will give you one CPU, 1 gig of memory. And we discussed already earlier 30 gig of disk space you could have, and no more than that. Key pair. So you have to type it in a key pair. I typed in earlier when I was creating my first virtual machine, and it is right here. You could pick your own key pair, pick any name that you remember, and then you will have to click on create new key pair. Once it's generated, then you could download that key pair and attach that key pair to your putty session. And putty session would allow you to connect to your Amazon virtual machine. All right. Once that is done, then leave everything default. Firewall, allow SSH traffic from anywhere. You could pick depending on your requirement. Leave for default. Storage, you could pick 10 gig, 20 gig, 30 gig, whichever you like. I would say go with 20 gig. But again, free tier eligible customer can get up to 30 gig. If you pick 35, it's not gonna stop you, but it will charge your credit card. So just be very, very careful. All right. So then you simply go and pick everything and click on launch instant. It will launch the instant, which will have your pre-configured or pre-built operating Linux operating system built in, and then you could access it from your computer or anywhere because we said allow SSH traffic from anywhere. If you want to learn more about how to create from this point on, what are the details, I'm sure you're going to find a lot of tutorial online that will help you create a Linux virtual machine on AWS. All right, so that's pretty much it. I'm sure you got a pretty good grip on how to create a virtual machine running Linux on cloud platform. One of the best features for Ansible is to automate or execute tasks on the remote clients. So you will have a control node where you will run the script and execute it against the remote clients. So this is something that we will be covering later on, and for that purpose we will need to create Ansible clients where those commands can be executed. So in this video, what we will do, the first step which we already have done, we identified our home lab, we installed the virtualization software, we created a virtual machine and installed a Linux CentOS operating system. Perfect up until this point. Now the next step is that we will create another virtual machine and we'll call it client 2 or client 1 actually. And then we will install a Linux operating system on it as well. We could install any version of Linux, but we will go with CentOS 7. If you have enough resources on your computer, then you could install another virtual machine which can act as a client, a remote client, and we will install a Linux on it as well. So you will have two clients which you could execute commands on, and those will be considered as remote clients for your Ansible control node. All right, so we already have one Linux machine, which is right here showing as VM1. We will be creating a VM2, which we will call client 1. So we'll go to our Oracle VirtualBox and simply click on new. There's no new, so we'll go here. Wait a second. We have to go to tools here, and now it will show me the options for new. Okay, click new. and we'll call it Linux Client 1. If you're creating additional client, you'll call it Linux Client 2. All right, so it has the Linux already selected. It has the version already selected. Perfect. Go ahead and click next. The memory, it's always good to give 2 gig. If you have less memory to give out, then leave it as 1 gig. That's fine. Next, create a virtual machine, sorry, virtual disk type, dynamically allocated, and pick a disk 20 gig. Click create, and it has created your Linux client 1. Go to the setting and go to the network and make sure you change the attached to from NAT to bridge adapter. Click OK. Perfect. Now we need to install Linux operating system on it. And as I said, we will be installing CentOS 7 on the client. You could install CentOS 8 or any version of your choice, but for this course, we will be picking CentOS 7 for the client. So we'll go to our Firefox and we'll go to download CentOS. Click on CentOS.org, leave CentOS Linux, which is 7, click on x64, x86-64, pick the first one, and then go to the one that has the highest size or biggest size, which is 9.5, CentOS 7, x86, everything ISO. Click on it, and it will start downloading. Of course, downloading can take time, so in order to save time, I have already downloaded that on my computer. So I'm going to cancel it. Now I have already downloaded. I'm going to minimize it. Now the next thing is I'm going to power it on, which I'm going to click on start. Okay, so now since it's started up, it's asking me where is your ISO image. Click on this little icon folder, add, and I have downloaded the ISO image right here in my folder ISO, and the 7 CentOS 7 is right here. And click open, and then click choose and start. Of course, as it's going through the installation, I'm going to be fast forward so we could save some time. Pick the first one, which is install CentOS 7. All right, so we have the welcome to CentOS 7, leave default, or pick the region according to your requirement. So click continue. Okay, on this screen, leave the date and time as default according to your or where you're located. Keyboard for me is English, language support is English, installation source is local media, software selection, click on that and pick server with GUI. Click done. Go to the installation destination. You already have 20 gig selected. Click done. It will do the automatic partitioning. And network host name, click on client Linux client 1 and click apply and turn on the Ethernet adapter, which is the networking for your Linux machine, and you already did the apply and click done. That part is done. Now click on begin installation. Root password, give a root password of your choice. The stronger that you put, the better it is, but if you pick the weak one, then you have to click done twice. Username, for me, it will be my name. It will automatically change it to my username. And the password, click done twice. All right, so it's starting the installation process. It has a few packages to go through. I'm going to fast forward, and once the installation is completed, then we will reboot the Linux machine, the client, and that will create our first Linux client. Now, of course, if you want to create a second client, go ahead and go to your Oracle VirtualBox and create Linux client 2. But for this course, I am going to use only one Linux machine as a client. Hey folks, so this is the last step of our lab setup. We have downloaded and installed Oracle VirtualBox, then we have downloaded and installed Linux operating system. Now it's time to install Ansible software or Ansible engine on our Linux operating system. All right, so one important thing before you go ahead and install Ansible is that I want you to take a VM snapshot. This will allow you to come back or revert back to the VM original state when you took the snapshot in case you do make a mistake or do some kind of misconfiguration on your Linux operating system. All right, so go to our Oracle VirtualBox. Right here, your Ansible control node is powered off. You have this menu. If you don't have this menu, simply click on these three dots, click on snapshot, and then click take. Give it a name. I'm going to give Linux install point, which will remind me this is the time when I've completed the Linux installation. Click OK. All right, it's done, and I'll go ahead and click start. All right, while this virtual machine or this Linux operating system is starting it up, let's go to the next step, which is Ansible installation guide can be found on this link. So I want you to write down this link because this will give you a lot of good information of step-by-step instruction on installing Ansible. If you are installing on a different version than CentOS 8, which I am going to be installing it on. So if I go to my Firefox, which I have already opened and I am already on that page, on this page you will notice here's a list of all the instructions of installing Ansible on different operating systems. Right here is RHEL, CentOS, or Fedora. These are the instructions which we will follow to install it on CentOS. If you are doing it on Ubuntu, follow this instruction. For Debian, follow this instruction. And there are other Unix or Linux type operating system which you could follow the instruction and install Ansible. All right, going back to our slide and going back to our virtual machine. Our virtual machine is up and let's log in as ourself. Okay, so if you notice, this is a smaller windows of VirtualBox. If you wanted to make this window bigger, you could right click on your desktop, go to display setting, and right here where you see resolution, click on it, change the resolution to whichever resolution according to your requirement. I'm going to leave it as is for now. Okay, this is a welcome message that you're gonna get. Every time you start it up, you could actually quit out of it by clicking here and quit. All right, so going back to display, we'll change whatever you have, apply the setting, and it will make it bigger. All right, click on activities, go to the terminal. So we have the terminal open. The next step is for CentOS Red Hat Fedora version 7, you will have to run the command yum dnf. DNF is going to be replacing yum eventually. So for now, you could use either or. So install epel-release and then install Ansible. Now for CentOS 8 or any of the version 8, these are the instructions that we will follow. Go back to our Linux machine. To follow these instructions and install any package, we have to run the command as root. So become root. All right. Now go ahead and run the command yum install epel release. All right. It's asking you to confirm, type Y and confirm again, and the package has been installed. All right. The next thing is yum install Python. Now, with CentOS 8 or newer version of Red Hat or Linux, the Python package should already be installed or installed out of the box. To confirm that, you could run the command rpm-qa and grep for Python. And you'll notice these are all the list of Python packages that's already been installed. Great. Now the next step is to install Ansible. So let's clear the screen and type it in yum or DNF. So in this time we'll run DNF. Install Ansible. This is the Ansible engine or software itself. And then next package that we will install in addition to Ansible is the Ansible documentation. And enter. All right, Ansible and Ansible doc package is completed. To verify it, you can run the command rpm keyway and grep for Ansible. All right, it's there, Ansible core and Ansible doc. The next thing is if you are using CentOS 8 and the above steps don't work, then follow these steps. So usually version 8 will come with Python 3. If it's not, then you follow these steps. Yum install Python 3 and then use Python package installer to install Ansible, which is pip3 install Ansible dash doc. All right, moving on. If you're using Red Hat 8 and the above steps that we followed did not work, then you have to enable the Ansible engine repository to install Ansible. And for that, you will run the command subscription dash manager repos enable the Ansible repositories and then install Ansible. All right, so now after Ansible has been successfully installed on your Linux machine, let's confirm. So here is our Linux machine. Let's clear the screen and you will run the command Ansible dash dash version. And it will give you the version of the Ansible engine or Ansible software that has been installed. All right, it is there. We confirmed that. Now run Ansible command module using ping. So it would be Ansible localhost -m ping. This command is going to run Ansible module called ping against the localhost. So simply as if we are doing ping localhost and it is pinging and confirming it could ping the localhost just like that, we have a ping module within Ansible. By the way, there are many, many, many more modules that we will cover later on. But for now, this is what I wanted to confirm to see if Ansible has been installed. All right, let's check the Ansible config files. So let's clear the screen again. The Ansible files, all of them are located in etc Ansible. And you do listing of the files and directories. You'll see there are roles directory, which we will cover later on. Then there's a hosts file. That's where all the remote clients inventory resides. So every time we run an Ansible command, it comes to this file to see where are the list of all the hosts or remote clients that it has to execute the commands on. And the last one is ansible.cfg. If you need to make any configuration change on Ansible, you could do it on this configuration files. All right, the last thing, please note, if you have SC Linux enabled on remote nodes, you will also want to install libsclinux-python on them before using any copy file template related function in Ansible. Now, you do not have to go log into each and every one of them. What you could do is you can use the yum module or DNF module in Ansible to install this package on remote hosts that do not have it. All right, so we will disable the SC Linux on our remote client because we are using all that setup in our lab environment. But if you're doing in production, then please make sure you install this libsclinux-python package. All right, so now this completes our entire lab setup and configuration. Now it's time to really get our hands dirty and run our Ansible automation scripts against our local hosts and remote clients. In this video, we will take a look at Ansible configuration file. Every application or package that is installed on any operating system comes with a configuration file. And I would say 9 out of 10 times those packages will always have a configuration file. Ansible, just like any package, when installed on your operating system, it has its own configuration file as well. Some of the most common parameters that can be defined in ansible.cfg, in short for configuration file, is as follows. So you could define the list of these parameters in your configuration file. But if you go into your configuration file and cat it and try to read it, you will see none of the parameters that are defined right here, which I'm going through. You could add them in there, but by default, the configuration file comes empty or it has comments in it. So the very first parameters, and by the way, these are just the common parameters you could define, you could change it, you could remove it. It depends on your system or your environment requirement. All right, so the first one, let's take a look. Remote underscore user equal Ansible. When you have that parameter set up in your configuration file, it means it's a name of the user account used to connect to your remote clients. Then we have host underscore key underscore checking equal false, which means it specifies whether SSH key or host key should be checked. So if a host is reinstalled and has a different key in known underscore host file where the keys are, this will result in an error message until corrected. So when you have it false, then it will skip that part. Then you have the inventory. This is where you specify the location of your inventory file. You could change the default location from etc Ansible and host file to any location of your choice, and you could specify right here in ansible.cfg file. If you do not specify, then it will take it by the default one, or it will take it that you specify by -i option, which by the way we'll cover later on. Then you have additional parameters for privileged escalations. Some of them like become equal true, which means whether escalation is needed for root, and if it does, how it's going to change it, what should be used on a local or client system for privileged access. Then when become user, what user it should become, and it should be root, which is the administrative account on Linux machine, which indicates that the name of the user account used to run escalated commands. All right. So when we are running escalated command, then you specify this parameters, which tells you or prompts you for root need a password for root needed when running escalated commands. So if you specify false, then of course it will not prompt you for a root password. So this is a very common, very basic configuration parameters that you could specify in your configuration file. But as a beginner, I would say you could leave the ansible.cfg file as is, and you could make changes to it once you have a good understanding of how Ansible automation works. At this point, we all know that the playbooks in Ansible are written in YAML format. So in this video, there are a few important things to remember when we are writing our playbooks in YAML and the syntax that we should follow when creating YAML files. First thing is all tasks in YAML are executed in sequential order. If you want a task to be executed first, it has to be written in the first order. Then each task that you want to be executed is processed one at a time. So just like a bash shell scripting, if you are familiar, it goes through the first task and then it goes to the second and third and so forth. Indentation in YAML file is extremely important. A lot of people will experience this issue that when you do not have the right indentation in the YAML file, it won't execute. So you need to know how many spaces you have to define, where you have to define those spaces. By the way, as we go through creating simple YAML files, we will know exactly about the indentation. Then no tabs in YAML file. Yes, please do not use tabs when you are creating YAML file while you are using VI editor. Now, maybe you are using a different editor which allows you to create or run tabs but then it converts to spaces, then it's fine. But when you are creating YAML files using VI editor or Vim editor in Linux, then do not use tabs. Only use spaces. Yes, it goes along with the first one. What I said, do not use tabs. You should always use spaces, and that spaces should define our indentation. Then empty lines that have no value. So if you have one empty line, two empty line, it doesn't make a difference. Just like a bash shell script, when you create empty lines, it has no value in your execution of your task. File extensions is usually .yml or .yaml. Now, if you do not have a file extension, that is still fine. The YAML file or the playbook will be executed, but it is a good practice that you create your YAML files with extension .yml or .yaml. All right, then there is no difference in double quotes or no quotes for a task name. So when we define a task name, every time we write a playbook or we write a play, a task name has to be defined. Now you will notice maybe when you do a search online or you go through certain other resources that certain people have double quotes around a task name. And certain people don't have quotes. That is fine. You could use double quotes or not, it will still execute. Then YAML playbook files can be placed anywhere on the file system as long as they are being executed with absolute path. Yes, so our YAML home directory is, our Ansible home directory is /etc /Ansible. So you can keep all your playbook or YAML files in that directory. That's a good practice. But if you wanted to keep those executable files somewhere else, that is still fine. But when you run it, you have to run it with the absolute path. All right, when a flat file is written in YAML format to execute certain task or plays, then it is called a playbook. Inside of a playbook, the format that we use or the code that we use that is in YAML syntax, but once it's created and saved, it is called a playbook. There is no need to modify file permission. Yes, as you notice, if you have written bash shell scripts, you will have to give it permission, executable permission at the owner level, group level, or others level, which is the XXX. But in a YAML files or playbooks, you do not have to give those executable permission. You could leave it as a flat file with the read executable files. That's fine. And you do not need executables. So you do not have to use the change mod command to define the special permission for YAML file. So anyway, these were the few important things that you should know and remember before you start creating your playbooks in YAML format. So the very first thing you would do when you log into your Linux system, then you use a VI or Vim editor, and then you specify the name that you wanted to choose for the file. So here you start the VI editor, and in order to define that it is a YAML file, you have to type it in hyphen, hyphen, hyphen in the very first line. This is what defines that it's a YAML file. Once this is defined, then you put in spaces and put in the name of the playbook. This is the name of the entire playbook as to what playbook is exactly doing. Then you put down the host. If you notice, host is right below, exactly below the name. Make sure there are no additional or less spaces. It has to be right below the name. And this host defines where you want to run this playbook or which host you will be running this playbook against. Then you have another syntax or parameters in the YAML file is the become, which states that run as a different user If you type it in yes, then it means you will have to define which user you want to run it as. So in the second fourth line, you define become underscore user root. Now you do not need to define become yes or become user, which type of user. If you take it out and then you run this playbook as a root, then it will run it as a root. But if you run it as a regular user, then it will run a regular user. This is only defined when you are running as a regular user and you want it to run as a root or vice versa. All right, next thing you notice here is an empty line, and we are starting our tasks after the empty line. Empty line, once again, does not make any difference. And the task is right below where the be or become is. The indentation in the YAML syntax format matters a lot. The task is where you declare the task. You're telling the playbook, okay, playbook, now this is what I want you to run, or this is what I want you to do. And the playbook says, okay, what is that? Then you have to define the name of that play. And the name is, I want you to install Apache HTTP. And it's just a name, it's nothing executable, it's just a defining the name of the task. Look at the task, the T, right below the T, that's where we put in the hyphen, space, then the name. You cannot move this on the left or to the right because it will cause problem when you're going to execute it. So indentation matters. Then it's saying, okay, you want me to run the task, and the name of the task is install Apache. Okay, but what are we doing? So you're telling it use the module yum, run task module yum to install this HTTPD package. All right, perfect. All right, what is the name of that package that you wanted to run using the module yum? That would be HTTPD. Now, this is the exact name that you would use as if you are installing yum install HTTPD or yum install NTPD or yum install any package name. So that package name has to be the exact same name that you would install it with DNF or yum. All right, you're saying this is the name of the package? Perfect. Next thing is state. Now, I'll go and check that package. I'll get the package. Now, what do you want me to do with that package? Well, when you define the state followed by the present, it means what to do, and we are saying present meaning install. Now, there are different type of states in a package which you could get from the documentation, of course, which we will cover in many of the playbooks. So that's what the task will do as one of the tasks. It will get the package and it will install HTTP package. Beautiful. Now, do you want to do anything with this package once that package is installed? Then yes, I want you to do the task within that main tasks, of course. And this is the second task name. And in the second task, I want you to use the module called service. And then the name of that service is HTTPD. And what do you want the playbook to do? You want you want that package to be started. So these are two tasks that are defined within the same one big task of HTTPD. You could create additional task if you wanted to install another package, but that will be in a different indentation. All of these modules, if you are thinking, Imran, hey, how would I know which state to use and what package to use, or what are the different modules that I could use? Well, as you're going to go through the module and creating Ansible playbooks, you will learn, just like as if you are learning a new language or a programming language. The more you do it, the more you learn about it. So if you go to this documentation, exactly docs.ansible.com, I already have that open for you in my Firefox. This is the address. And here, these are the list of all the modules that are given to you out of the box by Ansible. So if you do Control F to find Yum module, you'll see right here is the Yum module. When you click on it, you will see all the parameters that can be used against that Yum module. So in our example, we are using parameter state, and the choice that we are using for state is present, which means the package, the defined package, has to be installed. And in the second task, we want the package or that service of that package to be started. So for that, you have to go to the service module. This is the Yum module. So we'll go back and do a find on service. Here is the service module. You click on it, you go to parameters, and the state that we define in our example is started, which means to start up the service. So you could get all the different kind of helps from this documentation whenever you want to define a module. And you should spend some time to go over or skim through the list of all the modules that are available to you and what are the different parameters that you could define.